All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am ready to call this special called meeting of the Oldham County Board of Education to order. It's April 16th, 2020, and we are virtual in our own spaces. First item of business is to approve an agenda. Superintendent, any additions or corrections?
No, ma'am, the agenda is perfectly fine.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
This is Larry first.
Motion was made by Larry and seconded by
Cat.
Patrick.
That's fine, yeah.
Mr. Kehoe, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Aye. All right, so that's 5-0. Thank you. We probably should vote by name from now on, board members. That was probably my mistake. So let's go to our first superintendent report. Superintendent?
Well, first of all, thank you all for attending this first virtual board meeting. We have some things we'd like to discuss with you guys prior to the regular call board meeting. So the first super report is I'm going to turn over to Mr. Deves and Mr. Gravis to discuss stipends for extra and co-curricular positions versus percentages. So Mr. Deves, I'll turn the floor over to you.
All right, thank you.
Deves.
Thanks.
Well,
Thank you for joining. Let me join you guys. And Rich is in here too. So Mr. Gravis will be jumping in and we'll kind of go back and forth on that piece. Our thought was we would walk you through a little bit of the presentation that we went out and did with schools as well as with some central office folk. And then have you guys ask questions. You can ask during it or at the end as well, so we can help that. But this basically came about over the past 3 or 4 years from you guys and Greg and different ones trying to look at ways to predict cost, control cost, but not necessarily take things away, but just give us a little bit of better footing financially going forward, we believe. So if you look at, I'm just going to go right through the PowerPoint slides. Just a little history lesson is we currently use percentages to pay coaches, extracurriculars, and co-curriculars, and that makes it tough to predict what the salary is going to be. Last year, we were about $1.16 million in salaries. If you combine all those co-curricular and extracurricular positions together. It's based on years of similar or like service. It is an unknown budgetary item every year because you might have a coach year one that's making 10% for a basketball coach or a baseball coach, and then they resign, and then next year you hire somebody who has 25 years of experience, and 10% of their salary can really fluctuate. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that. It's really also created some major differences between classified and certified. We could have two band director, or I'm not saying band director, it's not a good example. We could have two baseball coaches, one who's certified and has a master's degree and been in 20 years. And we could also have somebody who's been in 20 years as a classified position, but they could never make the same amount of money for the same job because of how we use our pay structure.
Yeah.
It also makes us have to decide what is verifiable to give you years of experience. And Rich can tell you he hears every little story under the sun of I coached Little League Baseball for 20 years. I was a college coach for 5 years. I was a middle school coach. And so does a middle school coach relate to a high school coach? Do you do AAU or a Little League? And people really get frustrated, and principals who hire them and athletic directors can't tell them what their verification is. Rich tries to get information back, but that's a tough call sometimes. And then it's frustrating, and people either take the job and then quit, or just say, wait a minute, I'm not in it for anything. We know people aren't going to make as much money as they probably should. They're going to work a lot more hours than what they are going to get paid for. They're working for pennies, but we're still trying to be a little bit consistent on it. The other thing it has done in the past is we've allowed some flexibility that is going to could get us in trouble. not legally per se, but it doesn't always meet the test of probably the best experience. So some different examples of that: you could take a 10% stipend and you can split it between two people. So if a program has 4 coaches and they want an extra coach, they can split the stipend. Well, if South splits the 10% stipend with 2 first-year people with a very low salary, is very different than if OC splits that stipend with 2 20-year veteran staff members. So you get some discrepancy that way, which then also can get discrepancy of boys and girls sports on that piece. So it's still Title IX compliant, but it sometimes doesn't pass the look test on that piece of it. So those are some of the concerns we have with the current structure. If you go to the next slide, I just want to show you the vast difference of salaries that people can make based on the position. So currently, we have certain positions that make 17% on the left-hand side, all the way down to 1.5%. Those are our different stipend ranges for different coaches. So, and then you can look at a first-year ranked 3 teacher as I'm going to use the 10% one, which would be a lot of our coaches and stuff would make $3,700, but a teacher with 29 years at a rank 1 would turn around and make $7,000 for the same position, same duty, same expectations. So you got a little bit of play in that anywhere along the way.
Mm-hmm. Those figures are actually very alarming.
Mm-hmm. And so I didn't put each position that each of those percentages go with. That's on our approved stipend sheet that we do every year. But it goes by time. It's somewhat outdated because it was built for a one high school, 2 middle school, small school district. It also when new sports came on, people sometimes just plugged them into places. And so we haven't gone back and always adjusted that. And it's just, I think it's time to clean it up if we all do it together with the different principals, Greg, and then the salary committee on that piece. So I'll refer back to this one slide one more time when I talk about where we're going to kind of give you a little bit of what we looked at when we did this. If you look at the next slide, I just want to show you the process we've used. We did see the need for budgetary. We knew we weren't going to go out and research like you're going to see on the next presentation. We couldn't go out and research everybody. So we said, let's research a couple different ways. Let's first look at what is our closest competition doing. And that's Shelby, Jefferson, Bullitt. That's where a lot of our regional draw comes for these positions. And then we said, let's also go out and look at what other like districts, either like academically, same philosophy of high sports programs, co-curricular programs, band programs. And let's pull, we looked at 12 and then we narrowed it down to 6 just to kind of keep the numbers within our group. We completed charts to show the different information, which I'll walk you through. We did a first just draft with a small group of people. And then we said, let's take it to principals and then have them look at it and give feedback. And then we went to athletic directors and got feedback from them and made tweaks along the way. And then we presented back to central office to say, are you ready to start showing it to the masses? And then Mr. Gravis, myself, Ms. Penselberger, we went out and met with every school individually and did an open meeting and just presented what we had so far and asked for feedback on that piece. So now we're at the point where we want to show it with you guys and get feedback because we understand, the minute you put a dollar sign to somebody's job, even though we had percentages before, people start questioning and they want change in different things. And we wanted people to understand there's a lot more to it than just the schools sometimes do things a little bit different, even based on the same job. And so we had to try to think about what does that look like? And that's where the principals, the coaches, and even the ADs helped us come in and say, hey, here's how we look at drama. We do 3 programs where this one does 6 programs. Or here's our expectation for summer programs with band or choir. Here's how many after school practices we have. And here's how many all during the school day issues we do. And that was kind of really eye-opening too, to look at just how different SPDMs and different schools run their different programs. It was really enlightening. It was a good conversation. I think it helped principals also calibrate on what they need to make their expectations for their buildings as well on that one.
Excellent.
So I'm going to show you the next 2 slides, and I'll take questions before we go to the next piece. So the proposed one that we started to look at after looking at the research was most every district, I'm not going to say all, have a set stipend now where it's a fixed amount.
Mm-hmm.
So they know. And they also have a set number of positions on that piece of it. Stipends are based primarily around duty, expectations, amount of time. It's a fixed yearly budget now for Stephanie and the board. So you know what we're going to spend each year on that. Again, we were not Title IX compliant, but this puts us more into compliance, I think. And the reason I say that is you will have similar coaches, similar years making similar pay, where before you didn't quite have that. But we weren't out of it because we were following our own pay scale that was approved and so forth. So I don't want to say we were out of compliance, but I think this will help.
And Brent, can I add on that real quick?
Yes, most definitely, Rich.
Yeah, just good afternoon, everybody. Just from a former athletic director standpoint, I know every year when I had to submit our Title IX report, that was always something that came back because salaries were off, and it's something we always had to explain, and were eventually cleared. But it was something that always Drew looks at to make sure we weren't doing anything inequitable.
Yeah, good point, Rich.
Thank you. It also helps us with same pay for the same duties. There's no tracking. There'd be no tracking of experience, which helps. And then there would be a fixed number of positions where you, for the most part, you couldn't split. It really helps us say you get 5, you get 5. Now, if SBDM or the school wants to do something above and beyond, here's how much you can pay them, and that's on you. That's not on the board, and that will help tremendously from that aspect of it.
Yeah, excellent.
So the next couple pages of the research, and what we went out and said. So the left-hand column is, I'm going to start with middle school, the first one. The left-hand column is the position, and then the percentage we pay. And then if you go over 5 columns, you're going to see what Shelby, Bullitt, JCPS, Kenton, Jessamine, and Davies pay for that same position. Now, the awesome thing about Oldham County is if you look down that right-hand side of that column, all the ones that are blank, we could not find paid positions for. So if you look at just the middle school, we give awesome amounts of opportunities for kids. We want our kids involved, and we know that if you get some kind of school activity, then they're going to hopefully succeed and are more likely to succeed, and the research shows that. We're not proposing to make any cuts. We just wanted people, we were really shocked at how many of these other school districts and programs, the districts do not pay for this activities. A lot of it's either SBDM or other funding. So when we went through and looked at that, we said, okay, now how many number of positions do the districts give, and how many should we give? And that's where you see a proposed number, a proposed amount, and then a proposed stipend for 2020. And we've even tweaked it a little bit since then when we get layered down, but I wanted to show you the process on that part of it. If you scroll down to the next page, you'll see where high schools start. Now, other districts, as you can see, pay for a lot more high school stuff. Across these 6 districts and across the 12 and even across the state, you see more and more, but you also see some that are blank on that. So you can scroll through and you can see the different positions and different ideas. So,
Brent,
yes.
if I move across from the dance head coach at 10%, I'm not sure what that 10% means.
Okay, so what you would do, if you go back up 3 pages to our pay scale, where I had the percentages, the 10%, a dance coach in Oldham County at 10% with no experience, rank 3 certification would make $3,729. A dance coach with 15 years of experience on a rank 2 would make $5,557. And then the 10% rank 1 with 29 years would make $7,069.80.
So you have to move back and forth between these documents.
Well, we're proposing. So what I wanted to show in the research piece was that here's where we currently are. So if you go to the dance team, the dance head coach, right now we say we pay 10% of your salary. But if you go over 3 lines, we proposed $4,000 or $3,500, and then the stipend amount came up to $4,000 after talking with people in round 1.
Okay. And so then to take it further, this was the second part of my question. JCPS has no allotment. They don't have a dance head coach.
Correct.
Okay.
Shelby County pays $1,000. Bullitt County pays $2,203, and Kenton pays $1,061.
Our dance coaches just don't know how good they've had it.
Well, and I think that goes back to, as we've grown, we've said, hey, let's look. Okay, so dance and cheerleading, let's make those equitable back in the day. Or how many games do they have? So they plugged them in somewhere. Somebody did that down the road, which is, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we wanted to show what was currently there and then where other ones were.
And Brent, if I can, one other thing to add on that, help you guys understand. So in thinking about how this pay system used to work with percentages, like Brent said earlier, this was all intended with the thought of your coaches were your teachers in your building. That is not the case anymore. I just did a quick run on Munis. We have 113 paraprofessionals within the district right now. That's a pretty large number. So when you're thinking about trying to apply that percentage, there's 113 people who probably aren't teachers. Obviously, they're not teachers with us. They're probably not teachers in other districts. And so that gets to that point of where you get that large range and how challenging that percentage can be of trying to figure out where they should be with years. And so you get those years that are really, really skewed.
Right. Thank you, Rich.
So if you scroll down to just through more of that, as you go further down on some of our smaller activities or lower percentages, you start to see how many other districts don't pay for all those other activities.
Right.
Again, it's a good thing. Our community expects it. I think we want it. We don't want to get rid of it, but we want to show, if you take a group to KYA, and I know Rich could talk about it, he's doing it. We pay to run KYA or CUNA. Other places don't do that. It's one of those, hey, if you want a job, you're going to do this activity, and here's your other duties assigned. We're pretty fortunate, and there's times we pay for more than what we should. Some of that's to maybe make up for some salary differences with other districts. We've heard that. That's an attraction and a deterrent sometimes. So there's just a bunch of different ones on that. I want to go to the next one, then we can ask questions if you guys are okay. So when we did this, we told people, don't freak out. We have a funny feeling this is going to cost us a little bit more up front, but in the long run, what could save us money. So we wanted to show current staff that if your salary was below the proposed stipend, we would bump you up next year. So if you make $2,200 and we said the stipend was $25, we're going to bring the bottom up to the new stipend. We also said if your current salary is higher than the stipend, we're not going to drop you back down. We don't think that's best practice, but we're going to freeze you at whatever rate you are at the end of this year. And that's the stipend you'll make for the rest of your tenure coaching or co-curricular wise. So we wanted to kind of ease the burden that we weren't going to drop people, but you also wouldn't keep earning more year in and year out. The only ones that we said we would drop are these unnamed positions that came about after the research and talking with principals and schools. And I'll walk you through that here in a second. Other questions from the other board members? Suzanne, Kevin, Larry, Patrick, up to this point?
Yeah. Hey, Brent, it's Pat. Do have a question. I was approached by a couple of the football coaches, and saying, for instance, Oldham has twice the number of students and players as North does. However, you're trying to use the same schedule of percentages. Is that a fair method of doing so, or should a larger school get a little bit more just to make that difference up?
Yeah. So what we noticed was at the other districts, they have a flat amount, but then they allow the SBDMs, or used to be booster clubs. I don't know how they're doing that anymore because they're not supposed to. But they would allow schools to hire more. I didn't see anywhere where there's a sliding scale based on size, because from the couple we talked to, it was more about positions, not the amount of kids. So 6 or 7 coaches is enough. It doesn't matter if there's 8 kids in that, and so I'm gonna say football. It doesn't matter if there's 8 kids on the O line or 12 kids. That number, that position coach can handle that number, or JV varsity. At the end, there are some questions from different coaches and ADs, and that's one of them. I think about 6 years ago, Mitchell and Dorinda and some people worked on a system that said every time you get 10 kids more, you can get another coach in certain sports, which sounded really good. The issue is when do you make that decision? If you make it in the spring, you get a bunch of kids out for spring football and you have 120 kids on team. And then midway through the season, you're down to 70 or 80 kids. Do you cut coaches mid-year, or when do you do that? And so that's I'm not going to say it's game playing. It's just some of what happens in natural attrition of when is that point. So in this one, we try to go to the higher end of assistant coaches for almost all sports. One head coach would say, I'd rather take a little bit less up front in my salary and hire 1 or 2 assistant coaches. Another one said, hey, I'd like my salary higher, or where it is, and I'm okay with the number of coaches. I'll get volunteers. So that's where it gets tough to say, what do you do? Because 5 years ago, OC probably had the smallest number of football players, and they were the largest school.
Right.
And so that's the ebb and flow that we're trying to take out of the equation. So we could have the fixed costs. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. And we can always change stuff. So that's why we went around and heard from them who were the ones that were having issues, of where we placed them, how many we did.
Hey, Brent, this is Larry. Didn't you say earlier that they could split the stipend?
They used to be able to. We're proposing they don't split it anymore, because that becomes a tough piece on HR. It also becomes a tough piece, especially with where's the split, because some is going to want to do a 50% split, some want to do a 75-25, and then you have a different contract for each different coach, and then you've bogged down the system with number of people's coming in.
Mm-hmm. Part of this is Joyce. Part of the objective of creating this stipend per position was to eliminate all of these what ifs, to go to a flat stipend per position.
Yes, ma'am.
Kevin had a question.
Yeah, Mr. Deves, this is Kevin. So you mentioned earlier that you and Mr. Gravis went out and interviewed staff about this, and you've already mentioned a couple of concerns that they brought up, but were there other concerns that they brought forward to you guys that we haven't heard about today?
Yes, there are. If Kevin, if you'll let me go to the next 2 to show what we kind of finalized the proposal, and then I'm going to show you a couple more of the questions they had again after we came with that next one. And that's on that. I think it's like 3 more slides down. I got some concerns that different people brought up. And I told them I'll be up front with you guys with what they came up with and why we landed. And that's why we're having this meeting, to see what else we need to tweak on. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the next, you can skip the next slide, because since we're not doing shared, I just made copies of it. So you see the draft of 3.2. So middle school, real quick, you can see the number of positions. You can see the stipends that we've proposed.
Mr. Davis, this is Kevin again. Are you able to tell us what page number you're on? I want to make sure we're all keeping up.
I'm on middle school. The top of it says draft 3/2/2020, and the top left corner says middle school.
Okay.
Page.
It's the first page after the proposed extracurricular pay plan on the slide.
Page 14.
Sorry. My computer's not showing pages for some reason.
No, mine's not either. So try to keep up, Woosley.
Mine's saying it's page 14. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So if you look at this one, halfway down that that page, you'll see open slots.
Yeah.
And what we heard from principals and schools were all those small little stipends, the 0.5s, the 0.3s, really need some school flexibility, because one school might need more drama or more academic team, and one school might want more art club and dance. And so what we first said was a spot's a spot, you can't change it. And they said, well, we found out they were so different at middle school. They have like 20 different spots that they really were intermingling. And in the past, we allowed them to change the name if they wanted a drama teacher, but they don't have drama and they have an art club. We'd allow them to change drama for art club and just interchange those.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we decided is, let's just give them open slots. We don't care what the name is, but we're going to make them our smallest stipend of $500, and they can do whatever they want with those open slots. Okay. Yeah. Now they're going to have the most open slots because high school has more definitive names, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other,
Kevin,
yes.
Got another question.
Yeah.
Are they able to stack these open slots? So can they use 4 opens and add to
great question. Yeah, great question. They are going to be allowed to stack 2, but no more than 2. So we talked to them about looking at it as $500 per semester or $1,000 for a year. And they said they would come to some kind of agreement with that. The difference is like speech and debate might start in October and go till February, kind of like our winter sports. So it really goes over 2. Well, one school has a very small speech and debate, and they want to use it for other things. North Oldham Middle School has a really large academic team, speech and debate team, and quick recall team, and they pay 3 slots out of it. South Middle, or one of them have, I don't think it's South Middle, one of them has the same thing, but it's smaller, and one person does all 3. And so that they want to give $1,000 to that one person to do 3, where North is going to give $500, $500, and $500. So North will spend $1,500 on it. I'm going to say East will spend $1,000 on it, which is their discretion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But once you fill up all your slots, then you don't get any more unless your SBDM wants to pay for it.
Right. That was kind of my question. Are we asking for some sort of accountability in terms of who they're using those open slots for, what they're paying?
We're using accountability in that they're going to get their fixed number, and nobody can get more than 2 for the same position. But that's where we're going to stop enforcing it from there, because we wouldn't allow any more money for them. And that would come through a contract with HR and groups like that.
So here's another question, Mr. Deves and Mr. Gravis. We have assigned in 2020 4 assistant football coaches, assistants to the football coach at the middle school at $1,000 each. Can they can go over that allotment then by assigning 2 of their open slots to hire another assistant football coach?
They could, but from talking with them, they wouldn't. If you go back and look at they already have all these slots assigned to a lot of different programs. They don't want to cut those programs. And what we've said too is, if it's a named spot like football and you only want 3 football coaches, you don't get to change that to a basketball and open. You lose it. It's use it or lose it if it's named, and then it's create the open. I'm not going to say they would do it, but I don't think they would.
Brent, it was my understanding that those positions were strictly used for like co-curricular, because remember we said that any position that they filled, like an assistant football coach, that works within the $500, but you couldn't pay them any more. They had to be paid what that position was actually worth. So I
Right.
thought all those extra positions had to be funded through site-based. But
Yeah,
I
you
could-
can pay more than $1,000 for another coach.
So here's my question goes to the issue that I would like for this to be defined to the extent that it can be used into the future, and we're not dealing with any more messy, unclear situations where people are juggling money, et cetera.
Right. Joyce, if you scroll down one more page
Yeah.
on your PowerPoint, there are some rules down there.
Okay. Let's talk.
The rule for assistant ADs can only be paid up to $500. $500 for a full year at the middle school. Name positions can't be stacked or split. Name positions occupied by current staff prior to 2020 will be granted. We talked about that one. Track and field used to have this crazy, I'm not gonna say it's crazy, deal where you could stack head coaches and assistant coaches. So if you're the head track coach at a middle school or even a high school, you could be the head boys coach and the head girls coach, and you get both head coaching stipends.
Wow.
And then you could be the assistant coach and stack. And so you have two coaches that do a boys team and a girls team, and they're the same people. What we're saying is you can still stack the head coaches, but you cannot stack the assistant coaches anymore because you need it for supervision. If you don't need it for supervision, then you don't need them on that. And then we did say open positions must stipend amounts will start for all staff and cannot exceed $1,000 on that. And we can add that and just make sure it goes to co-curricular, not extracurricular. We can add that piece on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Brent, Kevin Weasley again.
Yeah, Kevin.
So if my quick math here, it looks like we've got about 60,000 doled out for each middle school. How did you set on what that stipend should be based on the season? So you've got basketball as 2,500, but you've also got soccer at 1,500. Did you look at the length of the season?
Yeah, that's a
How
great
did you come
question.
up with that money?
Great.
And my next question is, why couldn't we just give the schools $60,000 and let them dole it out instead of us putting a price on what it
Okay.
actually is?
Yeah. So let me answer it. Let me answer it. The easiest one is the second one you asked was if you just give them an amount of money, then you're going to get into Title IX issues because you're going to have different people giving different prices for coaches. They're going to be competing. And I think it's going to be an unfair market. I think you're also will get then people saying, well, at this school, we want to be really strong in golf. So we're going to give $5,000 and that's outside the market range for what a golf coach is. And then you get into, well, my buddies, then you got the whole buddy system, or I've known this guy forever, or anything like that. So I think that would be very hard to do for these positions. On the other one, if you would scroll back up real quick with me and just go back up to that sheet. It's like the fourth one that showed our percentages.
Yep.
It showed starts at 17.5% down to 1.5%. Well, there's a couple different criteria we looked at when we set those prices. One was we said, what are the other surrounding counties doing? How close are we to them? And so you can see the research of where we are in the other counties. Then we said, where are we currently with those groups? Are we are those positions 10%, 5%, 7%? And we said, okay, now we don't want to adjust anybody way up or way down. We're trying to keep this cost neutral as much as we can. So then we said, okay, let's look at this spreadsheet, and we try to get as many of these positions just to the right-hand side of the rank 2 15 years, a little bit higher than the middle of our pay scale. So I'm going to say if a position was typically a 10% position, we probably are somewhere between 5,500 and 6,000. Okay. And then the last thing we did was we said, coaches, how many sports are year-round? How many sports do off-season stuff? And what is your expectation of practice? So a good example, soccer. Soccer is a very fall sport in Oldham County. But in the spring, they go and play competitive soccer. They're not really playing Oldham County practice. There's not really on-field open gyms and stuff like that. Basketball seems to have a year-round. They have a game season, and then they practice and do different things. Football has a spring season. Baseball has actually become more than it was 10 years ago in playing a fall league and a spring league. So we try to talk about that. Another good example is dance team and cheerleading. They both go year-round. But dance team only goes to certain home games at most schools, and they dance for 2 or 3 minutes at a home game. Cheerleaders go to almost all home basketball, football games. They do it for the entire game, and they go the entire year, and they have different levels and different amounts of competition. So that's the kind of stuff we walk through with ADs and principals. And then we had to say, what's the difference between South, North, and OC, or East, North, South, OC on the middle school? And we tried to come to some consensus without making too much movement, but we did make a little bit of movement.
Wow.
All right. So the harder one to look at, you thought that was tough, is actually, if you go down 2 more pages to the elementary, it's basically stayed the same. It's the high school one. The high school one is really where you start looking at a whole lot more. So that would be probably page 17, I would think. It starts with draft through, and it has high school on it. This is the one where we got a lot of those questions, Kevin, that you were asking about us to really talk about.
Okay.
So, high school only has 12 open slots. They don't have the 20 like middle school, but look how many more they have named and what they do with it.
Yeah.
Some anomalies with high school. I'm going to first start with football. Football, has a head coach. They have their assistants. When we looked at the research, we saw a lot of places are doing both with football is you're having 2 head assistant coaches, and then the rest are assistant coaches. So you might have an offensive, defensive coordinator who get a little bit more than some of the other assistants, or you might have a freshman JV coach. So there would be 2 of those at 4,500, and then there'd be 4 at 3,500. So they're still getting 6 assistant coaches plus a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue that has come up with the 3 high schools is there's a position called weightlifting. And the weightlifting position really should be school-wide for any sport to use. Right now, some schools, their head football coach does it, and other schools, somebody else does it. And the question is can a football coach do a weightlifting program for the entire school during the fall season when football's going on? We don't think so because they're out practicing and it's after school. So we're saying if you're going to do that, then you have to open it up and have a program year-round for your 6,000, or you can get 3,000 a semester, and the football coach can do the spring and somebody else do the fall. Or you could hire truly an athletic trainer, and they could do all of it for $6,000. So that's kind of an anomaly. Some schools do that, and other schools don't. So again, they'd be grandfathered in, however they're doing it right now. But as we hire new people, we move them off of that. You can see where we did the same stacking piece with weightlifting and so forth. A couple of the concerns, just to tell you out there, one was soccer. One school said they did a 2-semester soccer program, but the other 2 schools said we definitely do not. And when we talked and looked at it, we decided to decide on let's just do the 1-semester soccer. So that one was a little bit lower than baseball went up. Another issue was band. Band used to be a little bit higher than football and basketball, but a lot of other places it's either lower, or what we've come to find out is some schools don't give a band stipend, they give extra days. So like if you look at Bullitt County, they're like 4,500, but they gave like 10 extra days because of summer band camps and that kind. Well, those 10 days, depending on where you're at in your teaching career, could equal about that $2,000 or $3,000, depending on how many days you do it. So the band has asked to give extra days, but if we give extra days, then we probably don't need to give a stipend, or we need to reduce the stipend to decide the days. So right now we're still at 9,000 for that one.
And once again, just a reminder to everybody, I know that we've got some real experienced folks in some of these positions. These would still be grandfathered in while they're in those positions, and then that would switch over upon new hires. Because we're not trying to take money out of anybody's pocket right now.
Thank you.
And then you have some rules at the bottom for them as well. With named positions have to stay, open positions, the whole thing of stacking cross country and track coaches. Yes for the heads, no for the assistants. But if you stack them for the head coaches, they get 1.5 the stipend, not both stipends. Because we're trying to encourage them to get 2 people, so you have the supervision for it as well.
Hey, Brent, can I ask something real quick?
Oh, most definitely.
I'm assuming right now that the band director doesn't get days; they get a stipend only.
Correct. Right now they get a 17.5% stipend. The high school football and basketball coaches get a 15%, and then the other sports we're getting 10%.
Okay.
For the most part, on that. So right now they were getting a little bit, but we also talked, band is one of those co-curriculars where they get to teach class and practice in class, where the extracurriculars don't get to do that, but they also go year round and they do stuff in the summer. So, I mean, there's different philosophies. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. It's the extremes. They sent me a document. One district gives 53 extended days, just like an assistant or associate principal and the FFA director. Another school gives 10 days with no stipend, or some schools just give a stipend. And it's all over the place. So, we talked with John Hard and some of the other big band programs, and it really is all over the place with that. So if we want to look at days and stuff, that's something we can talk about. But we are trying to stick with just stipends right now and then get the pleasure of the board after that. We did not cut any programs in this. We won't cut any positions of current people, but if, let's say, you used to have 8 and we've gone down to 6, when those people retire or resign, you wouldn't get to rehire for those 2.
Yeah, X-ray.
I would say we probably need to pause right now.
Pause. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwell. So we are now back live. Thank you.
So let's proceed then with the report, if you don't mind, Mr. Deves. I think there might be some more, or are we at the questions and feedback?
I think we're at the question and feedback. Those were the concerns that were brought up, and I was upfront when people said we would bring them all. Mr. Grass and myself would bring them to you. Again, we could change all the numbers and probably make some people happy and other people not. And I'm okay. I feel like you guys need to look at it, talk with Mr. Schultz. I will tell you that finance and Julie Fowler and them love the idea of the flat stipend, just because of predictability. And as we get into these times, we're trying to look at raises and different things along the board. We have a better idea where you're going to be at the big picture wise.
Budget wise.
And Brent, one thing I don't think you mentioned, and I apologize, just stop me if you did say it, but I know one point that was made several times during our discussions was that you got to think in the long term too of the number or the amount of money that people are going to make. Where if you look at a position, say, oh, that person now, a football coach is making X amount, and when we hire a new one, they're not going to be there. You just think about them starting out as maybe a first-year coach. They're going to be making exponentially more in the beginning, and stretch that out over their career. it does pretty much equal out to the step system along the way throughout their career. So I just think that's important to bring up as well.
Well, and coaches aren't staying around as long as they used to. So that percentage doesn't always benefit them now either. And then that's where that whole, how do you verify years of experience? I went from a middle school coach of 15 years. But do you get full experience going to a high school coach? That takes that out of play.
Yes.
It's Kevin, we still got another question for you. Earlier, you said we were currently spending 1.6 million a year in stipends.
1.16.
1.6. Okay, when we get this fully functioning and everybody is on this scale, so everybody who's currently on it has retired, we've replaced them with people that'll be on this scale, what will we be spending then?
Kevin, I don't have that number in front of me. I'll be the first to tell you. I'll get that though for you.
Okay.
It was a little. I'm probably muted. No, I'm not. Okay, I'm sorry. It was a little bit of a savings, but as we mentioned, one thing is that people aren't hanging around as long as they once were, and secondly, that would at least give us a real sound understanding of where we would be every single year with the extracurricular, co-curricular piece. We spend a lot of money on that piece, and if we were able to solidify that through this plan, that would make budgeting a little bit more easier.
Greg, was that the one that went to like $908,000 or something?
It was, I want to say it was somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 savings in the long run down the road.
Right. But I'll find that for sure, Kevin, have them run that for us.
Okay. And are these taxed as regular payroll, or are they paid like once a year or incrementally throughout the year?
I'm going to let Rich talk to that, and he'll probably know more. Rich, could you talk to him? If you're over a certain percentage and you're an employee, you get it over the year.
Yeah, if it's
so I'll let Rich talk about that.
yeah, it's if you're like a teacher or employee and it's over 10%, it's included in your 24 pay periods. So it's just added into your check throughout the entire year. Everyone else is paid at different junctures in the school year, kind of at the end of the season, once the season has been completed, and payroll sets those dates of when those stipends are paid out.
But it is all payroll, Kevin, so there are taxes on all of it.
Yes. Yeah, everybody's an employee.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions. Any more questions? Board?
I have a question.
Yes, Suzanne?
I just noticed that KYA and Kuna listed at only $500, and there's only one position, and I'm assuming they can use their other open positions. But I just know, having kids that have gone through KYA and Kuna, that those teachers are pretty involved, and there's a lot of meetings and a lot of hours put into that work, in addition to the weekend long conference that they go to. And I know that they have more than just one teacher that helps out with that. And so I'm guessing that they would use their open positions for those. But I just think if somebody's leading KYA or Kuna, I find the $500 extremely low personally.
Yeah, so KYA and Kuna used to be in one of those lower slots that would have been an open slot. And we felt like it was important enough, after talking to all the schools and they all had it, that we'd at least make it a name it or claim it or lose it position on that. And so a lot of them had one or two people doing it, and we're making less than that at it currently. But again, we can look at and change that and talk to them again.
Yeah, that's good feedback. I think, we got to rely on schools, and this is a district-wide issue, remember. Patrick.
Yeah. Hey, Brent, were you expecting, or Joyce, was this going to be put on the agenda for the next meeting to vote, or do we want to wait, hold off, and let a public expression period happen about this? I've gotten a couple emails while we were talking, and some coaches can't get in to express their opinions about this. So I'm just questioning, is there a way we could hold off for a vote until the second meeting, or maybe have a public expression first thing at our next meeting?
Let me ask the superintendent and Brent what your thinking is, and what kind of, if you were planning to present this as an action item.
It was going to be presented as an action item next board meeting. The question would be is if the board is interested in hearing from these coaches before a vote is taken, then obviously the board's pleasure could move public expression to a different part of the board meeting before that occurred, or you could table the discussion on this event and have public expression where obviously they can come and talk at that point, and then put on for the June board meeting, as long as it occurs before July 1st, because July 1st is when we sign new contracts moving into the next year. It's really the board's pleasure on how you'd like to proceed with that.
Patrick, let's talk about that. I think we have to be very careful. I mean, I want to hear from these folks that have concerns, but I also have trust and confidence that Mr. Deves and Mr. Gravis have met with these folks. I think my first suggestion would be to direct them back to Mr. Deves to try and get some resolution to their questions. We can proceed with public expression at this next April board meeting and still hold off on taking action until May, if board members would be more comfortable with that route.
Okay, I think there was a couple questions that were outstanding for Brent that was going to get back with a few things. So I'm game for anything.
Okay. Well, I think maybe unless there's any opposition, that would probably be a good approach. This is this was a really serious and large issue for the district that Mr. Deves and Mr. Gravis took on, and it's worthy of the board giving it some really serious consideration too. I just want to caution you, we've all had our individual experiences. I had a lot of experience over here with soccer and debate. So broaden your thinking to a district-wide approach, and we'll have time that will allow time then in the next month and a half to get some resolution to our questions.
Okay.
So just so I'm clear, because I'm taking some notes on this, Madam Chair, is we won't put this on the agenda for a vote per se, but we will have public expression. And because they could then come at that point and express, and we bring it back to the agenda in May for action. Is that how the board would like to proceed?
I think that's what I'm hearing, to allow more time for persons to have an opportunity for public expression, Superintendent. However, we have to figure out how to allow for public expression by virtual board meetings.
Right. And that was one of some of their concerns also. They just didn't know how to get into this meeting. Well, this is a special call meeting, so there's no public expression, but they also wanted to have their opinions out there. So
yeah. So we're in a little bit different world with a virtual meeting. So we'll have to put some thinking about that, and we'll put out some guidance for the folks that might be impacted by this on how they can actually get that to us. It may be as simple as they send us a statement that we read, or they send us questions or something of that nature, but I'll work with Ms. Corson to figure out the most legal and effective way in which to do so.
Excellent. So just a couple reminders, board members, about public expression. Even if they were to appear virtually, it's not a question and answer period. We won't respond. And so that was my first thought. And my second thought is, if you receive emails on the subject or any of these superintendent reports, would you share them with the whole board in case we're not all included, and so that we can all be thinking about the same things? Great.
Can I just add one thing? If you just ask those people, coaches or parents or whoever, they want to reach out to myself or Mr. Gravis, we can take those and look at the spreadsheets and give some feedback as well.
That was yes, of course. That goes without saying, Mr. Deves. I want to thank you all. I mean, this was a yeoman's task you took on, and man, it was all over the board, I think, when you started investigating. And I think it's serious enough that we spend time to get it right. And I want to thank you on behalf of the board, both you and Mr. Gravis, for all of the effort you put into preparing this information for us.
Okay.
So, Superintendent, we're ready for report number 2, sir.
So keeping in the vein of working with salary schedules and trying to look at things through a historical lens as far as also moving forward, we've invited the Management Advisory Group, we call them the MAG Group, and Mr. James Britton, we call him Jim, the Vice President of MAG, to share with us his presentation. I really just kind of walk you through the PowerPoint. We're not going to show his PowerPoint on the screen because we're worried about connectivity, but just the methodology behind the MAG Group, and then we'll have a little discussion afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you, Superintendent. Mr. Britton, are you with us?
Thank you, folks. It's a pleasure to be here virtually, together at a distance.
Welcome.
I'm Jim Britton with Management Advisory Group. It's our pleasure to present to you tonight a little background on what we were able to accomplish for the school district over the course of this year. I've shipped to the school district a PowerPoint presentation. I hope you have a copy of that in front of you.
We do.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to recap the purpose and objective of why the district chose to undergo this process. The district wanted a compensation study for approximately, ended up being 420 employees in the classified and support staff positions. These were not teachers, nor were they administrative positions. They included administrative assistants of all types, executive secretaries, finance and payroll clerks, coordinators, bookkeepers, essentially non-teachers, non-management, and administrative folks. We have been providing these types of studies for school districts and city governments and county governments. We work exclusively in the public sector. We've worked with many of your neighbors throughout the state of Kentucky, so we were very pleased to be chosen from this project. This study was designed, I'm on slide 3 or page 3. The overarching goal of any classification study and compensation study is to make sure that folks are getting paid fairly and that the agency is in a district to more effectively recruit and retain employees. So this process started out with us asking employees to spell out for us so that we can understand the work that was being done by the employees under the different job titles, so that we can make sure that folks with the same job title were essentially doing the same work. Because it was a fairness issue. If people had the same job title, but they're doing significantly different work, then they deserve to be in different classifications. We wanted to ensure internal equity by trying to reduce any wage compression if it existed, and to make sure that everyone's job classification matched the work that they do. We also did a salary survey. I'll talk more about that in a minute, in which we compared the compensation plan with the school district for those job titles to your peers and competitors. And then we came back and we're working with the district to develop an implementation plan on how we can make better position the school district so that it meets the goals of these studies. And along the way, we also want to provide to the district some software and training in the use of software. It's a freely licensed software package, so that this can be an ongoing process, so that if 2 years from now you create a new support position, the HR department is has the methodology and the software to place that job in the proposed pay plan to keep everything current. So this study, I'm on slide 4, page 4. This project is not designed as a staffing study. We didn't look at the work that was being done and make recommendations as to how many people were needed to do the work, nor did we undertake an organization study in which we proposed shifting people around or combining offices, that type of thing. We also did not do a performance review. We wanted to understand the work that folks were doing, but we were not in a position and are not in a position as a result of this study to cast judgments on how well we think they are doing their job. Now, the goal of any classification and compensation study is to make sure that folks are getting paid fairly. It's not to guarantee salary increases. Some folks, we will present to the school district recommended target salaries based on the number of days that a person has been in their job and if there have been a pay grade or range change. But the overarching goal is not to say that everyone is going to get a 3% raise, that type of thing. We can, however, say that we've never recommended pay decreases. Those target salaries, we calculate based on the number of days that a person has been in that job. And if that target salary, according to our software, ends up being lower than their current salary, Our software just reports the current salary. So we never see what that difference would be, and it's not available to us. So I'd like to spend the purpose of the study. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Yeah.
Let's talk about the methodology. So we asked employees to fill out what we call the job profile questionnaire, in which we captured the duties of their job. We conducted employee sessions. We visited the school district. We sat down and did orientation sessions so that we could explain the role of the study and what we were asking employees to do. We sat down with your leadership team and we identified positions where recruiting and retention were concerns. During interviews with the top management and some selected staff, we gathered salary and compensation data from your competition. We surveyed for comparable data. We reviewed the questionnaire to make sure that we understood the work that was being done. We wanted to make sure that everyone's job title matched the work that they did. And then we provided recommended changes to the school district. We came back out, we sat with them, with your leadership team, and then with your department heads so that we could show them the proposed placements, the results of the survey, listen to feedback and propose. And if we could find data to support feedback for changes, then we undertook those changes, and those are reflected in the report as well. So the methodology is summarized in page 6, the flow chart there. We have 2 separate teams. We have a job profile questionnaire team, and we have a market survey team. Those 2 sets of data come together to put together the new proposed pay plan, recommend salary adjustments, and to develop costing models for the school district. As far as the questionnaire goes, I'd like to address that on slide 7 or page 7. We believe that there's no simple formula to determine the value of a job. We ask a series of 20 different questions, and 14 of those are multiple choice questions. There's a number of different job factors that we use to calculate a job profile based on the answers that we get from the questionnaire that have been reviewed and verified by their supervisors. We believe that each and every one of these factors is part of determining the job profile and where the job fits on the new proposed pay plan. So I'd like to switch gears and talk about the survey and the survey data. So we worked with the school district and we developed a list of private sector and public sector agencies that we could include. Now, we notoriously have a difficult time getting private sector data. Employers like to hold that information close to their vest. It gives them a competitive advantage. They don't want their talent to be poached, that type of thing. But all companies do file salary information with the federal government, and that information is available through a website called ONET Online, produced by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And we can drill down on that by job title all the way down to a specific zip code anywhere within the United States. We also included the other agencies that you see listed there. Now, a few of these were unable to reply or unwilling to participate in the survey process, but all of the participants, all the agencies that we targeted are there. The survey results, overall, we found that the district is very well positioned. Anytime you get within plus or minus 5% of the market, you're in a relatively good position here. So we survey for 3 different positions for every job. We look at the minimum of a pay range, the midpoint of the pay range, and the maximum of the pay range. And your district is in fairly sound shape there. On average, for the 20 or so jobs that we did survey, you're within 6.7 to 6.2%. Now, some jobs fared better than others in the survey, and I talk about that on page 10. Okay, so we found that your most competitive positions in the survey were your bus monitor, your custodian, custodial supervisor, and so on and so forth. Some of the positions you are uncompetitive or non-competitive. meaning the market is, you're trailing the market in these positions. And at the minimum, that can vary from your database administrator there, we deem non-competitive, but at the minimum, you are competitive. The starting salary for your database administrators is fairly competitive, but at the midpoint and the maximum, that's where you fall off. That's why that position is in there. But some of these jobs are as much as 13% behind the market at minimum. So we are recommending adjustments for some of these, as well as the HVAC technician, which is 8% behind the market, and so on and so forth. The specifics there have been provided to the district, but and will be part of that report.
Mr. Britton, can I ask a question? It's Kevin Woosley.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
I'm on page 9 of your report where it says overall results show the district positions surveyed lead the market. You've got at minimum 6.3%. What does that mean? Is it 6.3% of the minimum entry level position? We are 6.3% higher than that?
No, sir. That's the survey average. So we surveyed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different jobs. And on average, the district is 6.3% ahead of the market. The average minimum for all of those jobs is 30,600. The district is at 32,700. So it's still within market range, we say.
Okay.
Now that's the starting salaries on average for all of those jobs.
Gotcha.
The midpoint would be the halfway point between the minimum and the maximum for all of those jobs averaged together. And then the maximum, of course, would be the upper end of each one of those jobs' pay range. So that's the average. And then on the next slide, we talk about which jobs you're not competitive with and which jobs you are more competitive with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so advancing to page 11. Our recommendations are for, and that's actually 41 job titles. 41 job titles are part of the study. We created a unified pay plan. And what unified means is that it has a set width for all the different pay grades of 55%. And there's a 5% difference between the different pay ranges. We found that the market will support this. The averages did come back to around between 51 and 55% of the range, and it was about 5% between the pay grades as well. So we're recommending about 26 different pay grades for the studied titles, and the results of our recommendations are to establish competitiveness for the school district, so that you should have an easier time recruiting and retaining, especially those positions that you're having more difficulty with at this point. It does make your entry-level market position and your midpoint and your maximum competitive, and it does bring the salary ranges within line for the market. Now, before we go to the next slide, I want to spend a couple minutes about the methodology and how we place positions on the different pay grades, because that's not covered in any of the slides so far. We asked the employees to fill out the job profile questionnaire, and that gives us a quantitative figure, a job profile value for every one of those jobs. That value, that quantitative value, is compared to the market line, the pay line that is developed as a result of the survey. So the survey itself doesn't specifically mention where each job will definitively be placed on the new pay plan. We use the survey data to set up the structure of the pay plan. So the range of the pay plan and the differences between the pay grades. And that gives us a quantitative line that we can compare the job profile to, and that makes a recommendation as to where the job should fit on that new pay plan. And then there are other factors such as relationships between jobs. So if the job profile questionnaire for an accountant 2, per se, that wasn't one of the studied positions, comes back at the questionnaire has a quantitative value less than an accountant 1, but we know that's an inverse relationship, then we have to analyze that difference. And of course, that's where our over 30 years of experience in doing this work comes into play as to making recommendations is the word jobs fit on that new pay plan. So it's a quantitative part with the job profile questionnaire, the salary survey itself, and then internal relationships between jobs. Obviously, a lead worker should be paid significantly different than the people that they're leading, that type of relationship value as well. So with all of those factors on page 12, I've spelled out most of your 12 and 13 is essentially the recommendations for the pay grade groupings. These are not based on I'm sorry, it's getting late in the day. They're not based on occupational category. They're not based on which department they work for. They're based on, again, that placement, that quantitative value based on the job profile questionnaire, existing internal relationships, and survey data that we've found. So we've gone from pay grade 102, where we find the bus monitors, the exceptional children bus monitors, up through pay grade 119 for your district energy manager and your finance supervisor. Now, again, these placements have been discussed with your leadership team as well as your department level leaders, and they've had input on this, multiple opportunities for input, and this is the result of all of those discussions. Are there any questions so far?
Questions, board members? All right, you're on a roll, Mr. Britton.
Good. I'm a former teacher, so I like to pause often to see if there are any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next steps from here, we would finalize the study with the school district. We will hopefully, this always works better in person. I run our Nashville, Tennessee office, so I've been the one doing the business travel. I'd like to come up and install our freely licensed classification manager software on your district computers. It's freely licensed to the district, and show them the methodologies. We'll sit down with your HR folks, selected personnel from HR, possibly finance, because there is a finance component as well, and go through the methodologies and how to use the software to classify, reclassify, create a new position, as well as the financial components. Our software is pretty specifically different from what our competitors can offer, because we can allow your finance department to play, to play out different scenarios. If the board wanted to see what would be the impact of, say, a 2.5% across the board impact for those positions, then we could punch in those numbers, and within literally seconds, the number and the value could, the financial impact could be devised. So those are the next few steps for management advisory group. Again, we can work with the district. There's always a question, especially this time with our clients, this time of year and the recent turmoil, is how to implement the recommended changes. And because of especially the severe economic downturn at this point, and how long is it going to take to recover back from this, this information is based on this year's salary data. So moving forward from here, we're open to working with the district to make recommendations on how you can frame implementations and the impact, financial impact of those moving forward.
So, Jim, thank you very much for that presentation. And board, what I want to share with you at this point, some takeaways. One, we are not that far away from being in a good position as far as making sure we're competitive with our compensation. Remember, our goal is to be the best place to work within this county, also within this region. And I think our financial package is not that far off. And so we're working on the local implementation. The other nice thing about working with the MAG group is on that software is we don't have to wait for another 10 years to pass. We can revisit this in a couple of years and constantly make sure that we're staying competitive with the job market. Obviously, some of our positions in the classified realm before the COVID crisis were extremely hard to hire because of just competitiveness. Everybody that had a job, that wanted a job, had one. And but this will make sure that we stay within the market value, that we're not overpricing positions or we're not underpricing positions. So I think when we first got the contract approved, somebody on the board says it's a long time overdue that we look at this. So we've gotten it's been a lot of hard work. It's been a lot of hard work on us. We've met with Stephanie and Rich and Brent and myself and Ann, and has brought Jim in a couple times. It's been a long process, but it's been a very good process, and I think will make us better when it's all said and done.
Yes. I appreciate your remarks, Superintendent. I want to ask board members if there are any additional questions or comments for Mr. Britton.
I do have just one question. On page 11, the second bullet point there is a 5% between proposed grades. Is that a national average that you came up with, or was that? I'm just wondering if the trade skills, if that should be a little bit higher. I'm not sure in between grades.
Well, so what I'm hearing are two different questions. First of all, the 5% difference is based on your specific market. The 5% difference between grades. The placements of the positions, there's 5% between different pay grades, but the difference in jobs between your skilled trades and your entry level, that's reflected in the different pay grades themselves.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Other questions or comments, board members?
I have a question.
Suzanne.
My question would be, you said we could revisit this in 2 years because we would have the software. So does the software go out and collect the data from ONET and keep up with what current pricing is?
Sorry, I had to make sure I was not muted. It won't collect that type of data, but what it does, it allows us as we build new positions to make sure that we have some of the same quantitative skills to then make sure that we put those positions on the right spot within the pay scale. We have access to some of this information through OVEC anyway, but the challenge has always been what we call a position, maybe they don't call the position the same thing. So it just gives us a little bit more insight, a little bit more tools in which to stay competitive.
Okay.
Moving forward from here on how to implement the plan and carry it forward, there's a figure published again by the federal government called the Employment Cost Index, or ECI. And we're often asked, how do you adjust further down the road, aside from just implementing this year? What do we do next year and the year after? You could use that Employment Cost Index, and we recommend that because it's a little more, the factors going into it are more stable than the Social Security Cost of Living Index, which the government also publishes. The factors that they use, whether it's the price of gas one year and the price of natural gas the next year, and they can swap those in and out. There's a lot of game playing in the Cost of Living Index, but the Employment Cost Index, the factors going into that are a lot more stable, and the government does publish for state, local, and municipal employees for the past 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. And part of our recommendations is to use that figure going forward on how to adjust folks' salary based on that.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. You know, we have looked in this district when we questioned whether our salaries were competitive. We have looked, for instance, at bus drivers for adjacent counties and like-sized counties to compare, but don't think we've ever looked at the district overall. And I think it's your report is encouraging to us that we are not major outliers compared to everybody else. So I think this is a superintendent report. We'll just take it under advisement, and we certainly appreciate everything you have provided for us, Mr. Britton.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just let you have one question before.
Okay,
First, I have
Mr.
one
Woosley.
question before you. How did you settle on these 41 positions? You've got bus monitor, custodian, even down to secretary, superintendent, where we only have one in the district. But I don't see like bus drivers mentioned, which is our biggest vacancy.
Yeah.
One of the reasons,
really our biggest need. So why didn't we look at those positions versus?
Those are easier for us to compare because that is easily tracked. That's a 1-to-1 type situation. So we know where we stood with bus drivers. That's one reason we did the raise last year. And we may still need to do some raises this year. When we contracted MAG, we wanted to make sure it was for the things that we didn't have a real good knowledge about, to make sure that we were getting a full picture. So all the positions that they studied were the positions that we felt we needed to get a better set of eyes on.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question though, Mr. Woosley. I appreciate it. Any other final questions for either the superintendent or Mr. Britton on this report? We're going to move along then. Thank you, Mr. Britton, for joining us.
Thank you, folks. Have a pleasant evening. I'm going to sign off now.
Thank
Stay
you, Jim.
healthy.
Take care. You too. Thank you so much.
Report number 3, sir.
All right. So the rest of the evening is much shorter and not as much depth, but some very good information. So I'm going to have Stephanie share with you the next one, which is to consider the report on the 2020 property tax calendar changes. So Ms. Anderson.
Hello, Miss Anderson. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So you have a letter that we received from the state, and they are indicating that there's going to be a 60-day delay on the property taxes. My real concern was how far was that going to delay us as far as getting the state's calculations that they give us as far as compensating rate, 4% and all of that. And I contacted Shay Ritter, who is just a top-notch guy at KDE, and his feeling is that we are only going to be delayed at that part of the calendar by 1 to 2 weeks. So if you notice in the letter, on the second page, they say undoubtedly there will be a delay in getting bills out in some counties. So that could be an issue. It could slow down our cash if our county is not able to get the bills out in time. I know they're very concerned and conscientious about getting that done. They know what it means to us. So I think they're going to do their very best to not have a delay, but there is a possibility with that. And then in the second paragraph on that second page, it also says, this may be just the first adjustment made for this assessment year. So they're in as much flux as we are. And I think we're just going to have to be patient on all of this. So what this means to us is last year we got our certification. It came from the local county PVA at the end of May. This was the last 2 years. And we got information from the state at the end of July. And then the first week in August, we got information about what our rates could be. And then we did our ads in August. So what this means is the state's going to be, they're saying 1 to 2 weeks behind, which puts us at the first week in August. So they could be the same as previous years.
The same or very close, huh?
Yes. But
It could be. I just want to make sure that this was on your radar in case you hear about it out in the community, because it could. I think this is best case scenario, that will just be delayed a couple weeks. But obviously, we deal with the county clerk always asking us to continue to get those tax rate hearings done so they can set those. It just may be a couple weeks later than what we typically are able to do.
Well, it is what it is. I don't even know what to say. There's not much we can do about it. We have to work within the system. So I appreciate you being on top of it, Stephanie, and sharing this with us. Any questions, board members? All right, we're going to move along. Ms. Anderson, thank you so much.
all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Superintendent report number 4, sir.
So because of the COVID crisis and us losing face-to-face contact with not only students, but also staff somewhere in the area of March 15th, we ran into an issue with our CEP, our Certified Evaluation Plan, which we were just not able to get all evaluations done. So Mr. Deves is our liaison for the CEP, and we have been granted some waivers by the state of Kentucky. and those waivers need to be acted upon by you guys in the regular board meeting, but he wanted to walk you through the changes to the CEP in advance of that. So, Mr. Deves?
Yeah, guys, thank you again. It's pretty minimal, but there's some deadlines that have to be met. If we back the end date up, any teacher who's getting, or any staff member who's getting non-renewed or demoted still has to be told by March 15th. Traditionally, we do 3 cycles for observations, and the third cycle is supposed to be done yesterday, April 15th, but could not get that done for teachers and our other professionals like our mental health, our school psychs, librarians, and all that. So basically, what we're asking for a 2-week extension that we have all those conversations completed by May 1st, which still gives Rich and myself 2 weeks to create letters and get those out to staff. The other piece on that is we are asking for leniency for anybody who finished cycle 1 and 2 but couldn't finish cycle 3 to be evaluated just on cycles 1 and 2. And if you were able to get cycle 3 done, then you're going to be evaluated on cycles 1, 2, and 3. But everybody will have their evaluations done and at least have multiples for non-tenured teachers in 1 year. And for our tenured teachers that were on a 3-year cycle, you had the 2 years previous and a peer observation or some kind of information this year as well. So that is, and then the only other change for teachers and other professionals would be we're supposed to do goal setting conferences by the end of the year, and that might not happen. And so a couple of years ago, we'd asked that all those be done at the end of the year so you could plan summer PD. We're just asking to push those up to be done in October like they used to be, just so we have time to go through and make sure we can have those conversations as needed as information's coming back slower from test results. There are any for certain parts of it. For the student, for the school surveys on impact and culture and climate. And so we just want to wait for those. The only other change then also we're asking for the principals and central office staff is that if there's anybody who's being demoted or non-renewed, that we move that date from April 15th to May 1st. We're still getting a letter by May 15th. And then everything else with them would stay the same because it has to be done by June 30th anyways. I met with the CEP task force or committee, and they've approved that. And so tonight I just need approval of the amendments to the CEP. And then in that PowerPoint that's attached, I just want to give you information. Next meeting, I'm going to come back and we're going to have to change some of the CEP for 2021 because there's new principal standards. And I just want to get you a little foreshadowing on that as well.
So only one correction. He is not actually asking for approval tonight. This is a super report for approval at the regular board meeting in about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yes, same thing I was going to say. Thanks, Super. So, Mr. Deves, can you remind board members how frequently we have non-renewals? Just average? Do we have very many non-renewals in this district?
We don't have a ton of non-renewals, but we're also not an employment agency. So if somebody's not where we're at, we're more growth mindseted in that, a first, second, third year teacher, we want to grow them. We have 4 years to non-renew somebody who is non-tenured for that year. Yes. And then the first day of their 5th year, they become tenured. Yeah. And so we do growth goals, and then we can do ICAPs for that group as well. And then a tenured staff member can still be non-renewed, but we really go through, they have to have an ineffective rating on an observation or have done something wrong. And then we do a growth or an ICAP with them and work through that process. So we don't have a ton. A lot of people, some people just say it's not for me and will resign. But some people, they're not the best fit for Oldham County or for the kids, and it's okay to move them along as well. And you guys have been supportive of that. We want to hire the best and keep the best, and we want to grow because some of the positions are hard to find. And so I'm going to throw out a physics. You just don't want to roll over physics teachers because there's not many. You want to grow people, and so as much as we grow students, we want to grow our staff too.
Yes.
I think last year we had 5 or 6 non-renewals. You might have a little bit more with some different issues with for funding issues, depending on what happens with the COVID. this year, but it would be more of we don't know where we're going. But a lot of times you can hire those people back at the beginning of the year, and I can let Greg and Rich talk about those probably more than me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I can add on that, I think this year you may see an increase in non-renewals just because of the current economic situation. In that normally, I think principals and directors are pretty lenient of letting someone have the option to resign instead of being non-renewed, because on any application in the state of Kentucky that ask if you've ever been non-renewed, and obviously that's up to the applicant to answer that honestly within their own conscience. But a good principal will do their research and find out why that person's not there anymore. But the positives of, unfortunately now, of the positive of being non-renewed is that you would be eligible for unemployment. So you may see people deciding they're going to take the chance of having to mark that box so at least they can get unemployment, rather than if they resign, they really wouldn't be eligible for unemployment because that was their choice to leave that position.
Yeah. Wow. What a different discussion we're having on that issue this year. But I appreciate both of you sharing additional information. We do have new and fairly new board members. So good information. Questions, board members?
I do have a question, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Woosley.
Mr. Dees, you said we had a March 15th deadline to notify of non-renewals. Did we make that deadline?
No, it's May 15th. I'm sorry if I said March.
15th. Okay.
So on top of what our staff members are being asked to do and our administrators now are having to conduct this whole process virtually, which is just an added hardship, I think, to not be able to have these discussions face to face.
You are correct, ma'am. It is a challenge, but once again, I think our staff is doing a great job stepping up to the plate and meeting that challenge head on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Superintendent, I think we're ready for report number 5, sir.
All right. So once again, due to COVID, we have some other changes going on. So this is concerning grading, and obviously the board sets grading policy. It's policy 4060. And so I asked Ms. Corson how was the best way to go about doing this at this point, because I've got a lot of concern. I think everyone is giving their best effort possible. Teachers are giving a yeoman's effort. I think students are giving a yeoman's effort for the most part, and I think families are giving a yeoman's effort. And so more information and more guidance has come out from the state. And we were actually, I think, thinking along these lines before the state gave us some guidance, and it's nice that it actually matches up. But really looking more of the resolution that would, and I'll let Ann read that because it's got a lot of big words in there, but it's more or less kind of a hold harmless type thought process to the grading, that we want to make sure that, even though we may be giving stellar work, we know that we have some students that are just not able to connect.
Yes, sir. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Rosie must be over.
He's been dropping off occasionally.
Cue the music. Cue the music, Trey.
Well, we're still online, aren't we?
Wow. Annie.
Well, let me just, he's back.
Are you going to read this whole thing to us?
Well, I was not going to unless you wanted me to read it. This does not have to be acted on until the regular meeting. So I'm happy to read it to you tonight before you try to fall asleep, or you can you can read this, at your leisure. I think Greg can explain the gist of it.
Well, or you can explain the gist, Madam Legal Beagle. Let me first ask him, why don't you do that, Annie? Summarize it for us.
Well, really what it is, it's a resolution that would, for this year only, this school year only, modify the grading policy, which Greg pointed out was 4060, which says students are going to be graded on a A through D, or is it A through F schedule. And this is going to allow elementary students to be pass-fail. It'll allow middle schools to be pass-fail. And unless the middle school student is taking a high school class, that high school class will have to have a grade. And all high school classes will have to have a grade because of the KEYS money that they earn, and that it cannot be pass fail. So that's how we would do that just for the rest of this year. The middle schools want to freeze grades at the trimester. If they don't do pass fail, they're going to pass fail the third trimester basically, and freeze grades after the second trimester. So
Okay.
and it wasn't, this is really something that the instructional side really came up with how to do this. So I'm sorry, Greg dropped off for a minute.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Oh, great.
I am back. I don't know what happened. You're doing a great job explaining that. But really, what I was saying before I somehow just vanished was this is a hold harmless proposition, where a student could enhance their grade if they've done a stellar work, but we don't want to penalize a student that may have unusual circumstances at home. And irregardless of their best efforts, we're just not able to make things meet for them as well. And we definitely don't want to do a pass-fail at the high school level, because KHEAA, the Kentucky Higher Education Authority, will not award KEYS money on a pass-fail basis. And we don't want to endanger students' KEYS money in the high school level or high school courses.
All right. So great summary. Board members, questions? No questions?
This is Kevin. When you froze that grade at the end of that semester,
Well, we lost Kevin.
a student can increase it, but it won't go lower than what it is. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Good
So-
point.
I also have a question. So if a student just gives up right now and stops turning in all the work, any work, just stops participating, how do we address that issue?
That would, if it's at the middle school level for a non-high school course, or at the elementary level, that would be a failure. And then that possibly could impact whether they are retained or not retained. I would want to make sure that at the school that we did everything within our power, either through a teacher, a counselor, an assistant principal, or principal, to reach out to those families to ensure that it's a choice that the child is making, not something that's going on within their lifetime. All of our high schools know that they've got some kids that maybe aren't on the path to graduate. And so their NTI is a lot of trying to get those kids to where they couldn't graduate. It's really, even though this is some broad guidance, the schools are really looking at it as an individual approach also. We don't want anyone to suffer. And we're trying, if it's a motivation issue, we're trying to reach out to motivate those students as well.
So
Thank you.
Pat,
I have a question.
just a second, Suzanne. So Patrick, those middle and elementary students who are going to receive pass fail, they still are responsible for their work. Their pass fail has not been determined yet. So I think that's worthy of remembering. Suzanne?
Yes, my question was, I understood the reading on the middle school part of it, but on the high school part of it, where it talks about the grading, it almost makes it sound like they're still going to be graded for the work that they're doing currently, or is the high school the same as the middle school? It's at the end of the second trimester.
No, well, I think I understand your question, so I'm going to try to answer it. Then you tell me if I'm getting there or not. So grading or assessment will still continue, and I'll use the term assessment versus grading, because the way NTI is supposed to work is that it states that learning is supposed to continue. But I've actually had some conversations with principals where they've talked to me about isolated cases where students were completely straight A, and all of a sudden some of them are just really experiencing depression during this time period and are spiraling, and the school has talked to the parents and have talked to the kid. And so, my take on that is, if that child was still in our schools within front of our teachers, if this was not occurring, that probably was not going to happen. And so when I talk about a hold harmless situation, I want schools to take into consideration virtually at Oldham County High School, for every 1,600 kids, I want the school to take into consideration every situation for all those 1,600 kids individually. And the same thing would be true for South, or the same thing would be true for North. We want to ensure that we know going into next year instructionally for an underclassman, someone that's not graduating, that we will have some ground to make up instructionally with the students. And I want us to focus more on that than focus on just an A grade or a B grade. And I've tried to assure teachers, this isn't a reflection on the work that we're giving, because I think we're giving tremendous work. I think we're giving very good work. But every kid, I've heard multiple stories of students that throughout their best efforts are just really, really struggling for a variety of different reasons, either connectivity reasons, whether all of a sudden now they're become the primary breadwinner in their family because their parents have been laid off and they are the ones that are going to have to go work. You'll see more early graduation requests on the regular called board meeting this month because we have students at the alternative school that were about ready to finish. They've accelerated, they've finished, but now they are the primary breadwinner in their family. And so I'm very concerned that hold harmless is the best word I can use to make sure that we're being fair with families, being fair with kids, knowing that virtual instruction cannot completely replace in-person instruction.
Yeah, correct. Additional questions for Ann or the superintendent, guys? All right. Thank you, Ms. Corson. We'll take action on this item at the end of this month. And superintendent, we're ready for report number 6, sir.
So I'm going to call Ms. Corson again and or Ms. Anderson to talk to you a little bit about the application for FEMA assistance.
We received notice that there is a pool of money that is available from the federal government that's funneled through, not through the Kentucky Department of Education, but through the emergency, our local kind of FEMA groups that we could possibly recoup expenses that were above and beyond what we would normally spend during this time. So anything in addition to what we would normally spend. And I can kind of think about, spring break where we normally wouldn't, we wouldn't be providing meals, paying bus drivers, or there may be a variety of things that we may actually qualify for. And we had to get our application submitted by the 13th. And that just puts us in the system. They're looking at not just FEMA money, but other pots of federal money that we might be eligible for. With the school nutrition waiver, we might not need this money. We might get reimbursed through the USDA. So all this does right now is puts us kind of in the queue with everybody else, that if money becomes available and if we are eligible, that we could get a share of this money to recoup any costs. And at this point, we don't even know what costs those would be because we don't know how long this is going to be and what expenses that, we're incurring. But we had to submit an application and at the board meeting, we'll be wanting to have an approval that Stephanie and I can move forward on any applications that come our way.
Yeah, excellent. We appreciate you doing that. Questions, board members? All right. Thank you, Ms. Corson. Stay healthy. Is that your last report to us? Oh, no, we have another policy. Superintendent, we're ready for report number 7. Bring her back.
So, obviously, once again, because of COVID, there were some things that have happened at the state and the federal level. There's Kentucky Senate Bill 177, the Federal Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, and the Federal Emergency FMLA Expansion Act. And so Ms. Corson has done a really nice job, and I actually shared this with the state, so hopefully they're using it as well, because it's very clear, a chart that we then had to discuss the board's part of, because there's some policy places where we have some say on what we do. And so there is a resolution, there is a actually policy, and it is a resolution because it's only through December of next year on types of leave and how you'd use that. So I'm going to let Ms. Corson explain a little bit more about that.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, we are now subject to two new federal acts that expand leave opportunities for our employees. The first one is an expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act, and typically that's an unpaid leave that people can take if they're if they're sick, if they're caring for someone that's sick, and other limited circumstances. But typically it's 12 weeks of unpaid leave. This new act has given employees 10 weeks of paid leave if they are not working because they are at home taking care of children because their daycare or their school has closed and they have no one else to watch their children, no other responsible adult in the home. So that is pretty limited. It is, it is just for that purpose. If your daycare or school is closed due to the coronavirus pandemic, you could apply to have benefits under the FMLA leave expansion. That leave is paid at 2/3 of their regular pay, so it's not a full pay benefit. The second leave act is an unpaid sick leave act, and it applies in a new number of cases where the employee might be told to quarantine or self-isolate, or someone that they are responsible for caring for has been told to quarantine or isolate, or there's the daycare situation again, or school, but that's just for a 2-week period. So an employee under this policy could have up to 80 hours if that's their full-time hours over a 2-week period. And they could get 100% pay if they're under a quarantine themselves or under an isolation order or have been told by a medical professional to quarantine, and they have sought a medical diagnosis. It doesn't actually cover people who are actually sick from the coronavirus because they have theoretically sick days that they can take, and sick days would not cover any other circumstances where you are quarantined. Technically, you cannot take a sick day because you're quarantined. You can only take a sick day if you are sick or caring for someone who's sick. So this was kind of their stopgap measure to allow people, if you are quarantined for 2 weeks, you can get your full pay for 2 weeks. So those are pretty detailed in how they are set out. And then the state went ahead and passed its own sort of relief bill for employees, which says that if you are unable to work because of the coronavirus, you could get emergency days. Boards can award emergency days. So this is an expansion on our policy right now. We have 2 emergency days right now, pursuant to the board policy. This essentially allows an unlimited number of days, and it's all up to the board. It's all discretionary with the board. So what we've done with our resolution is we have tried to narrow the reasons why you would want to take or be eligible to take this emergency leave by saying, first, you need to go through the federal programs and see if you qualify under the federal programs. Second of all, if you don't qualify under either of those programs, then you could apply. And what we're suggesting is that you apply in blocks of no more than 10 days, which is essentially two work weeks. And then you could renew it if for some reason you still can't work because of something related to the coronavirus. So we're making it discretionary with the superintendent to allow if it's for one of the reasons specified in the resolution. I think that we had to put some limits on it. Otherwise, it was completely wide open. If there was anything related to the coronavirus, you could ask for emergency days. And it's important to remember with all 3 of these relief bills that in order to be entitled to this kind of paid leave, you have to be able to or not be able to work at all, or you have to not be able to telework even. In addition, if the district doesn't have any work for you to do, you don't get to take these days either. So we're trying to keep everybody employed, or at least have work for them to do so that they are getting paid during the whole period of, while we're closed. So that's the goal of the resolution. I know it's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's a nice balance between being wide open and also, just not giving them any relief. So I think that we tried to strike a balance there.
Good explanation, good description, Ms. Corson. Let me ask if there are any questions, members.
I have one, Joyce. It's Larry. Can this money that we would be paying out on this Family Medical Leave Act stuff, Can we get that back from FEMA on the last thing we talked about?
We could apply. I'm not sure that they're going to cover salaries. I mean, the kind of balance is for a portion of these, we're only paying them 2/3 of their salary. Whereas if they were actually working, during that period of time, we'd be paying them 100%. So we are saving a little bit money on those people that are taking off to care for children or, or caring for another adult in their home that they can't live on their own. So, I mean, we have no idea really what we can reimburse for at this point. But I would plan on it coming out of the regular salaries, that money that we set aside for regular salaries.
Yeah. Other questions, board members?
I have a question.
Miss Suzanne.
On 7C, does that open us up that teachers could say, my kid's at home because school is closed and my husband is working, so I've got to be available during the day to take care of them?
Yes, potentially it could apply to teachers who are home with children who cannot work or telework. So if they cannot make that work at home, and there's no one else to care for the child at home, they could potentially take advantage of, or at least request, these kind of emergency days. And I'm honestly surprised no one has applied for it under the federal law that went into effect. I think that was retroactive to March 6th. And so far, our teachers are all working and somehow making it work with kids at home. So, but yes, they could apply for that if it just became too much where they can't continue to teach and care for their own kids.
But if they took it, it would only pay them 2/3 of their pay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question. Could become very burdensome once the word gets out, Ms. Hundley. So good question.
Well, I do truly believe that this is not private knowledge. I mean, it's out there within the media and everything else. I think it's once again a tribute to our staff that they are going that extra mile with kids and principals. We've had many Zoom meetings where somebody had to step away for a second, help their child with a homework question or a NTI question, and then come right back to work. And so once again, I just applaud our staff, because just like we're asking parents at home to work with their children, our teachers, many of them are doing that as well.
Yeah.
And we are having discussions in payroll that we can track this on the chance that we will get reimbursed for it. We haven't set anything up because, as Ann said, nobody knows what this is going to be available for, and we haven't had anybody request it yet. But we have thought about being able to track this separately if we need to for reimbursement purposes.
Good job, Miss Anderson. Other questions, board members? Wow, this was a great special called meeting. Superintendent, I think that concludes our superintendent reports. I want to thank everybody who participated this evening. It was quite a commitment, and as board members know, you all are home with your families too, so we greatly appreciate that. Superintendent, I'm going to ask you for your recommendation, and then I'm going to ask the other 4 board members to stay on the line, please.
Ms. Fletcher?
Yes, Ms. Corson?
Can I suggest we just have a brief recess at this point?
Yes. We will have
a
brief recess. That's much better, but I can excuse the rest of our guests.
They will actually stay right here for just that brief recess. And then we'll come back after the recess and just close out the meeting.
Okay. So do we just sit here now?
You sit there.
Greg, you don't need us to stay, do you? We can go.
You can go. Live stream will continue though when we come back.
That's what I mean. I mean, really everybody else can leave, but we are going to take a brief recess, board members. And now what?
If you will give me 1 second and check your email. Pause stream for just 1 second, please.
Superintendent, what is your recommendation, sir?
I recommend to adjourn.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Larry, motion to adjourn.
Motion was made by Mr. Dodson, and I need a second.
Second by Patrick.
Second was made by Mr. Kehoe, and I'm going to do a roll call to get your voting, okay? Because that's the only way we can do it. Mr. Kehoe, all those in favor, Mr. Kehoe, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Dodson,
Yay.
Mr. Woosley,
He may have lost. I'm telling him through text to get back on. I think he dropped.
and Miss Hundley,
Yes, yay.
and Miss Fletcher, yay. So what do I do about Woosley?
I've asked him to join the original back again. I think we lost him somewhere in the transmission.
Either that or he's in the bathroom.
He's not part of the meeting right now. I'm not seeing him as far as the participants.
Could we
Can
make it 4-0?
I just say four, one abstention?
No, that's not an abstention, but you could adjourn with a 4-0 because he left the meeting, but then I don't believe he'll be able to vote on the minutes at the next board meeting, vote on these minutes because he wasn't there the whole time.
Yeah, so we better give him a second. Where in the foo is he?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I've given him a text and I'm waiting for him to get back on this original one real quick.
Man.
Oh, and there he is.
Mr. Woosley?
He just left.
Oh, he's back in.
Mr. Woosley?
Yes, ma'am.
So the recommendation and the motion and the second were made to adjourn. How do you vote?
No, I'm going to keep this going all night long. I'm voting no.
So that'll be a 4-1 vote to adjourn.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
That's not awesome. Okay, I think we're adjourned, kids.
All right, thank you guys. We'll continue to work out the kinks and